Fear not, my friends, for though we face a democratic establishment in full control of our cultural institutions, seeking to burn this country to the ground with the help, of course, of establishment and neoconservative Republicans, there is hope. Several stories are dropping suggesting that come the midterm elections, though it is quite a ways out, we will see a red wave and Republicans will sweep through the House, maybe even the Senate, and then finally, no, nothing will happen. Sorry, I tried to make it good news, but I guess maybe it means the Democrats' agenda will be slowed to a halt. But let's be real, the Republicans probably won't do anything with the victory anyway, so we'll see. Unless, of course, people get active in the primaries and get rid of these establishment Republicans and these neocons, maybe then some populists can get in and make some real change. But the reality is, several stories have come out showing that Joe Biden's party, the Democrats, are in serious trouble, and they all know it. I mean, you've got Joe Biden's failing approval rating. You've got just the economy in general as a big indicator. And you also have history. Typically, a president's first term in the midterms, they lose a lot of support and people will then vote for the opposition party because they're unhappy with the way things have been going. Typically, presidents make promises that they can't keep. And certainly in this instance, it's something special. I mean, a lot of people were just told that Trump was the cause of all their problems and they believed it. And now that their problems are continuing, if not escalating, they're now saying, you know what, maybe I was lied to and we got to vote for something else. But there is other news. GOP flips Iowa State House seat. Not the biggest news in the world until you dig into it. This House seat in Iowa is a Democrat stronghold. This is following the trend we saw in 2020, where Republicans did amazing in the House races. They didn't win the House outright. They certainly did defy all of the polls. And so that's where things get interesting. If Democrat strongholds, a seat held by Democrats for decades, is now all of a sudden flipping Republican in a special election, Miami, of all places, is going Republican, and Southern Texas is going Republican, and Joe Biden's support, even among the black community, has dropped nearly 20 points, I do not see how the Democrats can recover from this in time for the midterms. And not only that, all of the bad things happening right now, mark my words, they will be used in attack ads. You don't even need me to say it. It's obvious. So every bit of pain and crunch that people are feeling today, all that stress is going to be bottled up, packaged, and resold throughout the entire cycle next year in the midterms, and people won't forget it. Now, let's be real. A year is an eternity when it comes to elections. And I've made predictions about Republican red waves before, and I was wrong. I was sort of wrong. Initially, it did look like Republicans were going to do really well, and then mail-in ballots started coming in, and then the Democrats started winning many seats. Yeah. So maybe I'll be wrong this time. I don't know. But I'm not just basing the data off of my personal feelings, Joe Biden's failing approval ratings, people coming out angry about what the Democrats are doing, or, any other polls. I'm looking at just the data. The history suggests Republicans will win. Will they do anything is the bigger question, and I kind of think the answer will be no. But you know what they should do? Impeach Joe Biden immediately. Because one of the reasons Joe Biden, in my opinion, his approval rating is going down, we've got more information implicating him in his son's scandals. They were sharing a bank account, according to new reports, which means the money that Hunter Biden was getting illicitly was being funneled to his dad. He was paying his dad's bills. That's the reporting. So how this guy is surviving politically at this point with even 42% approval, I have no idea. But I don't see this being forgotten by the time the midterms come around. The bigger question is, what will you do in the Republican primaries? Will you ignore them? Will you sit back and let neocons and establishment shills take those seats, feign resistance, and then as soon as they get in, Washington Generals, oh no, they're just so much better than me. You know, the Harlem Globetrotters, I made the analogy before. It was someone else who told it to me. Let's read this story and see what's happening in Iowa, and then go through the data, which suggests great news for the Republicans, should it matter. And before we get started, head over to timcast.com, become a member, and you'll get access to exclusive segments on the Timcast IRL podcast, as well as all of our new shows. And we have an event coming up. We have an event coming up, a live in-person event with Ryan Long performing and his good friend Danny Polishchuk. Probably pronouncing your name wrong, Danny. Apologies. But they're going to be performing, doing their stand-up routines at this big hangout with the Timcast IRL crew. It is a members-only event. So if you're a member, you will see the post. Later today, it will be open to all members. and you'll be able to RSVP, though I think we may have already sold out. I'm not entirely sure, but we'll have more information on that later. So you definitely want to be a member because we're going to be doing, I'm aiming to do one event at least every month. We'll see if we can pull it off. We're actually securing a new facility so we can try and set up our own venue for this so that we can make sure everybody has a chance to hang out. But you'll also, as a member, be supporting our work, helping our journalists do their job, allowing us to hire more journalists and fund the nonprofits we're making to stop censorship and to fact check the fact checkers. But don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, share this video right now with your friends. Let's read the story from The Hill. GOP flips Iowa State House seat. A pastor and tax advisor will become the first Republican to represent Newton in the Iowa State House in decades after winning a special election Tuesday to fill a vacancy in a once ancestrally Democratic manufacturing hub that has moved to the right in recent years. John Dunwell, making his second run for the legislative seat, beat out Democratic opponent Steve Mullen by a 60% to 40% margin. About 1 in 5 voters in the Jasper County based seat turned out to vote, according to the county's auditor's office. Now, I want to stress a few points. You may be saying to me, Tim, do we really care about state house seats? I mean, come on. Well, there's 2 big points. The answer is yes. First, the Democrats it's a manufacturing stronghold. This should be Union Democrat territory, and it's been for a long time. Republican? Listen for 2 seconds. These middle-aged dudes who are working in factories, who are in unions, I can't imagine for the most part they're going to be happy with what Joe Biden is doing. So you're going to see a lot of people start shifting away. And we've already seen the polls suggesting that in rural areas, many Democrat areas, they are now more in favor of Trump, even though Trump's not president anymore. But here's the big and most important issue here. Federal elections, I don't think are that important at all. A convention of states can be had if 2/3 of the states agree to the convention. And then I think you need, 37 or 38 to ratify? It could be 36. I'm not sure. So as more Democrat state house seats flip Republican, you end up seeing more Republican control of state level seats. Then you might actually get a convention of states that could change the Constitution. Boy, would that make things ignite very quickly. I'm not convinced the Democratic states are going to be like, this is okay. They're going to be like, burn it to the ground. So it is extremely important. These are the races I think we need to be focusing on. When Republicans win state house seats, this is what you should be paying attention to. Who is in your state legislature? Vote. I don't care who you vote for, just be active. They say Dunwell is the second Republican to win a formerly Democratic-held legislative seat since President Biden took office, after a Republican won a state Senate seat in Connecticut over the summer. More good news for Republicans. Quote, community engagement is very important to me. Being out and among the people is very important to me. Giving everyone a seat at the table is very important to me, Dunwell told the Newton Daily News as he watched the results roll in. I have a conservative philosophy. My passion is for Jasper County and Iowa. The team that I work with is for the Republicans. Dunwell had lost his bid against State Rep Wes Breckenridge in 2020, but Breckenridge quit the legislature last month to take a job at the Iowa Law Enforcement Academy. The district, based in Newton, about half an hour east of Des Moines along Interstate 80, has been trending Republican in recent years. Jasper County gave former President Trump 60% of the vote in 2020, the highest share any Republican earned there since Herbert Hoover in 1928. Before Trump, Jasper County had voted for the Democratic presidential nominee in 6 of the preceding 7 presidential elections. Dunwell's new district gave Trump 57% of the vote in 2012. Then President Obama carried the seat with 56%. They call this a pivot county. So if we jump over to Ballotpedia, taking a look at Iowa House District 29, they say this district is one of 710 state legislative districts that intersects with one or more pivot counties. These 206 pivot counties voted for Trump in 2016 after voting for Obama in 2008 and 2012. So you're going to tell me every Trump supporter is racist, that in 2 elections, they said Barack Obama was the right guy for the job. I don't think race played a factor. I think they much supported the guy. Twice. I couldn't even do that. Then along comes Donald Trump. And for some reason, these people said, that's my guy. I find that absolutely fascinating that we're going to see such a flipping here. Now, of course, Wes Breckenridge was the previously representing the area. He's now out. Let's take a look at how this translates into the bigger picture. For one, I'll state it again. You really need to hear this. Vote in your state House and Senate elections. You need your values to be at the state level. The federal government isn't going to come and clean the garbage up in your state or protect you from vaccine mandates or any of this despotism. It's going to come down to your state houses and things like that. But will there be a red wave is the question. Well, 538 says in September, no, but yes. Our best tool for predicting midterm elections doesn't show a Republican wave, but history is on the GOP's side. You know why I find this article fascinating? And I really wanted to show it. Because it's meaningless. Your polls are garbage, 538. All of the polls are garbage. I mean, they can show us maybe trends in the aggregate, but you have been so wrong for the past, 4 elections. The polls have just been completely inaccurate. Trump can never win, and then he did. And then everything they said about 2018, well, the Democrats did do really, really well. But the polls were once again wrong. And we saw the polls being wrong, really, really wrong in 2018. Man, they're just off their game. They don't understand. Their traditional models don't make sense anymore. People are moving around. Not to mention this. Right now you're checking these polls, but we don't know what county is going to vote for who because people have moved quite a bit. Blue areas might become bluer. Red areas might become redder. We will see. 538 says, as it is every 2 years, control of the House and Senate will once again be at stake in the November 2022 midterm elections. And one of the best tools we have for predicting those election results is polling of the generic congressional ballot. The generic congressional ballot question typically asks respondents which party they intend to vote for in the upcoming congressional election, without naming candidates, allowing the question to be asked nationally to gauge the overall political environment. And for several years now, we at 538 have been collecting these polls and calculating a weighted average for them. And we're excited today to publish our generic ballot average for the 2022 election cycle. As of Thursday, September 16th, Democrats lead Republicans in our polling average by 2.7 percentage points. This average is calculated much the same way as our presidential approval rating average, with a couple of differences. First, the lines we draw for the generic ballot averages are more aggressively smoothed. In other words, they are slower to respond to new data. Now, I'm going to skip over the nitty gritty. They say, historically, a generic ballot polling average calculated in this way has been very good at predicting the national popular vote for the U.S. House. Using our polling database, we're able to calculate a retroactive generic ballot polling average for congressional elections going back to 1980 on average. Across those 21 election cycles, our generic ballot polling average on election day missed the House popular vote by only 3 points. Yes, as you might recall, generic ballot polls misled in the 2020 election. They gave Democrats an average lead of 7.3 points on November 3rd, but the party won the House popular vote by only 3 points. But that was an unusually large polling error by recent historical standards. Okay, so forgive me if I am not going to read further. Your polls are garbage. I will say, there is some trend value in here. When they say the national popular vote for the House leans Democrat, I'm ready to laugh. Seriously? What are they doing? I mean, the approval is in the gutter. It's always been in the gutter, and people are still going to vote for these guys? Well, I tell you this. You know why? Because people hate the Republicans. You look at the civics data, the polls, and you can find that Democrats, for the most part, like Democrats. Republicans don't like the Republican Party. And so long as that's the case, Republicans being trash guarantee Democrat victory. That's why the primaries are so important. If you can get rid of these awful establishment Republicans and maybe get someone like, I don't know, Sean Parnell, far from a perfect guy. He seems like a regular dude. But he is not one of these establishment Washington types. He writes books. He's running for office, and he seems to be a normal dude. Maybe if someone like him wins the primary, you might actually see enthusiasm return. Get active in your primaries. Otherwise, as much as I'll say the polling data is probably bunk garbage, it still does show a trend towards the Democrats, and do not underestimate them. I know. All the establishment lefties are going to be like, Tim's predicting the Republicans win and they always lose. I'm literally here saying right now, as I said in 2020, do not underestimate the Democrats. They have this in the polls, and the polls could be wrong, but wrong by this much? Maybe not. I certainly think we're seeing a lot that shows hyperpolarization. So the Democrats might win the House popular vote, but is that going to translate to actual districts? I'm not entirely convinced. Districts aren't the same as the presidential election. They're based on population, so who knows? I think there's good evidence to suggest Republicans can see a major surge. I think all that really matters is the primary, because you're not going to get any enthusiasm for these establishment types. But if you primary these people, it might just happen. Take a look at this. From Fox News, Group that works to elect GOP officials at state level showcases record fundraising haul. Republicans look to strengthen their upper hand and control of state legislative chambers. And maybe, this is where we all need to be. A convention of states. I don't care where you live or what state you're in. I don't care if it's plus 50 Democrat. Go out and start campaigning for Republicans to win at the state level. And I don't care for the Republican Party. I'm just saying anybody but Democrats, fine. You know what? I would love to see a libertarian winning at the state level. But if we can get enough people, libertarian, conservative, or just anybody who opposes the wokeness, even I'm willing to bet some anti-war leftists would get on board with anybody but the Democratic Party, because a convention of states is all around good for everyone except the establishment. And that's what needs to happen. This is good news. The GOP, Fox News is reporting the GOP, a GOP political organization dedicated to electing Republicans to state legislative and executive offices across the nation, is spotlighting what it calls a record third quarter fundraising haul. The Republican State Leadership Committee will announce Wednesday that along with its strategic policy partner, the State Government Leadership Foundation, it hauled in a combined $8.3 million in fundraising during the July-September period, which the RSLC said is the most it's ever brought in the third quarter of an odd year. The RSLC is sharing its fundraising figures first with Fox News. Noted that the $19 million it and the SGLF have brought in through the first 9 months of the year exceed the total the two groups raised in all of 2019, which was the comparable off-election year in the 2020 cycle. The RSLC said its fundraising was boosted by an ongoing surge in online fundraising, thanks to the continued expansion of the committee's low-dollar fundraising program, which was launched in 2019. The average digital donation in the past 3 months was $24.41, and 11,500 new donors were added. The success we've had this cycle has been tremendous. But given what we have already seen in New Jersey and Virginia this year, it's clear we will need to work even harder in the months ahead to combat the commitment of national liberals to by-elections across the countries this cycle. RSLC President D. Duncan told Fox News in a statement, pointing to the only two states that hold gubernatorial, executive, and legislative elections in the year after a presidential contest. Democrats know that our razor-thin majorities in the states are the only things standing in their way from importing the socialist policies they are pushing in D.C. to the rest of the country. And we must do everything in our power to stop them, Duncan argued. While the Republicans are the majority party in both houses of Congress, and while the Republicans are the minority party in both houses of Congress and are out of power in the White House, it's a very different story in the states. Republicans control 54% of the 7,383 total legislative seats throughout the country, according to the latest data from the National Conference on State Legislatures. And they control 61 of the nation's 99 state legislative chambers. Nebraska is the only state with a unicameral legislature. They control 30 of the 50 state legislatures and have total control in 23 states compared to 15 for the Democrats. 30 of 50. Flip 6 to 8 seats and we get a convention of states, and then we can start amending the Constitution. That would be tremendous, and it needs to be done. My first proposal would be with the, what are we on? We're on 27 amendments. How many amendments? Yikes. I think it's 27, right? I don't know. Whatever. The next amendment, maybe it's 28. Reaffirming the Second Amendment. Repealing all laws pertaining to firearm ownership and restriction, unless the restriction is the result of due process. It can be worded better. You get the point. If you're convicted of a crime, due process is put in place to restrict you of your ability to bear weapons. That I understand, though I think there should certainly be a time limit on it. It shouldn't be a life sentence. But perhaps the Second Amendment wasn't clear enough. Anyway, look, you get the point. We can do a lot of things if there is a convention of states. And I believe most importantly, if there is a convention of states and the Republicans start saying a bunch of things, the blue states will secede. I'm not kidding. I think they absolutely would. But it's not just, again, only about the state level. I certainly think that's the most important, but take a look at this. House GOP leader McCarthy hauls in a record $57.8 million during first 9 months of the year. What? How? McCarthy? Yikes, man. This one actually breaks my heart. Of all the people you could give money to, it's McCarthy to break the record? Look, not the worst guy in the world. I guess there's so many Democrats that are worse, but he may as well be one. The Republican establishment shills. That's what they do. They're the Washington Generals to the to the Democrats' Harlem Globetrotters. But check it out. This is still big news. People do not like the Democrats. They say, Accumulating resources as he aims to win back the House of Representatives majority in 2022, GOP leader Kevin McCarthy brought in $14.7 million in the past 3 months. McCarthy's July through September third quarter haul, shared first with Fox News on Tuesday, brings the minority leader's total fundraising so far this year to $57.8 million, the most a House Republican has ever raised in an off-election year. Let me just repeat that. The most a House Republican has ever raised in an off-election year. McCarthy broke his own record, which he set during the first 9 months in 2019 by raising $41.6 million. According to aides, McCarthy's third quarter fundraising came from over 40,000 donors. And McCarthy for Congress had $7 million in cash on hand as of the beginning of October. Quote, I want to thank all our contributors who helped make this record-breaking quarter. With 13 months to go, the contrast is stark. Republicans nationwide are fired up to take back the House, while Democrats are running for the exits. With a record number of Republicans filing to run, it is clear our movement is more united and energized than ever before. Working together, I'm confident we will take back the House convincingly next November. And if y'all don't primary these people, nothing will change. How about that? So it's big. It's big news. And I got to say, there's more news that's going to be very detrimental to the Biden administration and to the Democrats. Joe Biden could get drawn into the FBI probe into his son Hunter. According to a new report, they shared bank accounts. And, well, as we know, Hunter Biden had said that he was paying for his dad's stuff. You can't use money interchangeably like that. Now, it's possible they were both on some entity, a corporation, a trust, or whatever, that had control of the bank account. But if that's the case, interestingly, if that is the case, that would mean that Joe Biden was explicitly involved in his son's business dealings. Let's say you have a business and you have two principal officers that are able to pull funds. The business can be on the bank account. You can claim, I'm not involved. But if your son is putting his money in the account and you use it interchangeably with him, then you are involved. Now, I'm not going to get into the full nitty gritty of this because we already talked about it quite a bit. I just want to point out this is going to tank Democrats quite a bit. Right now, Joe Biden's approval rating is just in the gutter. Fortunately for him, he saw an increase of about 1 point in the past day or so and a decrease in his disapproval by about 0.5 points. But currently, in aggregate, Joe Biden's disapproval is 52% to 44.1% approval, abysmally bad. The New York Post says Biden's approval 10 points lower than Obama's at the same point in his presidency. There are a lot of questions why. Why has Biden's approval rating gotten so low so quickly, asks 538. Interestingly, they say it's because of Afghanistan. I mean, maybe. You know, in August, Biden's approval rating was still going down, and then Afghanistan happened and it dropped dramatically. But do Americans really care that much about what's happening in Afghanistan? Perhaps, I don't know for sure. I think it plays a role, and I also think the vaccine mandates are going to crater Joe Biden. Why? It may be anecdotal evidence, but as much as the ever online lefties and establishment shills would have you believe, I actually talk with regular people all the time. I was recently at a farm talking to some people in Loudoun County. Very interesting conversation. They understand a lot of what we're talking about. They believe a lot of the same things. And these are in, marginally blue areas. So what's going on with Joe Biden's approval rating? I think the vaccine mandates play a big role in this. And I think they're going to try and tell you that, we're out of touch with regular people. But I will tell you this. My friends who post on Facebook, people I grew up with talking about Joe Biden being the best and Trump being a fascist are now livid and scared. Because they don't want to get vaccinated. It's really amazing. You got someone who's 35 years old and who's healthy saying, we have a mutual friend who got sick after getting the vaccine. I'm not saying vaccines are unsafe, but this stuff kind of scares people. I certainly think if you have any concerns, you can just talk to your doctor and don't take advice from me. It's just an anecdote. But of course, then this means that my friends, some of them are now saying what do you mean I'm forced to do this? I'm going to lose my job? Yep. I mean, you voted for this stuff. I'm not entirely convinced that if Trump was elected, it wouldn't be the case. I'll say this. I certainly think Trump would have been eager to mandate a vaccine. I don't think he would have done it. Trump couldn't even send in the troops to stop the riots. You think he would do it? Nah, he wouldn't. He wouldn't do it. He even now is still touting Operation Warp Speed and his successes, saying the vaccine's great, you should get it. If you like Trump, you can take his word for it. Although I think he got booed recently. But it's amazing to me how many people are distrustful of the vaccine who are mad that I'm telling you to do what you want to do and talk to your doctor. I don't care if you disagree with me on my opinions reading the news. I think you should have the freedom of choice. So I'll put it there. I think that plays a huge role in Joe Biden's falling approval rating. And I think the vaccine mandates are going to result in tons of scared people voting Republican. I mean it. I think the vaccine mandate was a huge mistake. I wonder if the Democrats genuinely believed that, okay, people are scared of this, so we'll mandate this and we'll win. But you've already got the Democrats. The deep blue areas are going to stay deep blue regardless of what you do. But what about the moderates? Regular people who are like, I'm not going to go undergo medical treatment by government force. What about those people? Yeah, they're going to be like, nah, I'm out. I suppose it remains to be seen. We'll see how it plays out. We got this story from timcast.com. I did a segment about it earlier. Ron DeSantis fining a Florida county $3.5 million for violating the vaccine passport ban. So I certainly think you take a look at what's going on in this country. You can see the rising popularity of someone like DeSantis, and you can see how many people are going to Florida and Texas because they want freedom. And I think it spells bad news for Democrats. But let's take a deep dive into the vaccine mandates and talk about some stuff. All these companies say 97% of our employees are vaccinated. The rest are facing termination. And it's like, yeah, when a bunch have already resigned over the vaccine mandates, I'll put it this way. Let's say you have 100 employees. 50 of them are vaccinated, 50 are not. No one's going to come out and be like, only half of our employees are vaccinated. What happens is they fire 50 of them, and then they say 100% of our staff is vaccinated. You see how that works? So when all of these states are like, X percentage of the state has been vaccinated, I'm like, is that because unvaccinated people are leaving? Yeah, that may be. So they look at places like New York, and they're like, New York overwhelmingly has, high vaccination rates. And I'm like, yeah. Is that because 500,000 people already fled Manhattan alone? And those people don't want to live under edict? Could it be that New York's real rate was 50%, and then, around half of the people who don't want to get vaccinated left, and now they're at 75%? I know tons of people who are trying to move to Florida. In fact, I know several people who moved from New York to Florida. It's kind of funny that's happening. And that'll change the percentage. Florida's vaccination rates will go down and New York's will go up, not because people are or aren't getting vaccinated, but because people are moving. It's interesting to see how that will impact elections when these people say enough. But there's other factors to talk about as we wind down this talk of a red wave. Check this out. From the Hill, consumer prices rose 0.4% in September, up 5.4% over the last year. This is a 13-year high in inflation. 13 years. A lot of people are going back 13 years and saying, hey, wait a minute. There was a major economic crash in 2008. So are things about to get really bad? I don't know for sure. I'm not entirely convinced. I think COVID was the crash. I think the lockdowns were the crash, and we got hit by it. A lot of people are taking advantage, and they're buying things up like crazy. I know that the land value is insanely high, and it's not going to go down. I keep getting told, because, we're expanding and we're building Freedomistan. I'm being told by people that it's a bad time to buy. And I'm like, maybe. It might be. Property value is so insanely high in rural areas right now. It's nuts. I'm talking like prices are tripling. People from D.C. are buying up property sight unseen, calling on the phone and saying, I'll take it. Where can I wire the money? I don't even care to look at it. Just give me the deed. That's amazing stuff. And then you find out you got an easement and the government actually owns the property or there's a lien. I mean, people don't care. But I'll tell you what I think. People aren't going to want to go back to cities. The Great Reset has scared people off, whatever you want to call it. Mandates are scaring people off. People want freedom and they want security. And with the supply shortage, people are saying, I might need to take care of myself. So you look at Bill Gates buying up all the farmland. Think it's an accident? No, it's because he knew rural land was going to skyrocket in value. At least in my opinion, he knew. Can't read his mind. But there's one other factor. People say to me, Tim, it's a bad time to buy. You should wait it out. There will be land available after the major surge and things go back to normal. And I'm like, what makes you think it's going to go back to normal? You think that people complying will result in normalcy? They're expanding the vaccine mandates. The OSHA rule just got filed. I don't think it's going back to normal. I think people are going to try and get away. I think people are going to try and find more land. I think remote work is making this possible. So maybe the prices will go down. I don't think they'll go down to where they were. In fact, I think they're going to skyrocket for one reason: Starlink. Now, I'm not giving you financial advice, but let me just say this as we wrap this up. You take a look at some of this land in like New Hampshire, and you can get great prices, like 50 acres for a couple $100,000. Now, a lot of people message me saying, a couple $100,000, not a great, are you crazy? And I'm like, dude, 50 acres. I've seen better. In central West Virginia, you can get 100 acres for $100,000. I'm not saying anyone's going to show up with $100,000 in cash. You get a loan to buy it, as most people do. And that means if you're buying 100 acres for $100,000, and you're intending to like park a camper on it or something, or you're going to live there or whatever, I mean, what do you really need? 5%? So $5,000 down and you get 100 acres? That is massive. A massive amount of land. Here's what I see happening. Starlink is rolling out already. It exists in upstate New York, and I'm told that in our area, it's going to be rolling out in maybe even a month, like it's about to drop. What do you think happens when you can live in central West Virginia with 100 megabits up and down? I'm not saying Starlink's there yet. I think it's at like 20. But what happens when you have high-speed, low-latency internet in the middle of nowhere? All of a sudden, people will be able to work remotely, coordinating calls and transmitting data. And then, with all the remote workers and people who want to, they'll find a cheap plot of land far away and they'll say, I want it. The demand will skyrocket now. Already out where we're at, there are people advertising land saying they will cover the cost of Starlink for you. And that's one of the reasons they're charging so much. Oh, yeah, we want double the standard value from a year ago, the average asking price from a year ago. But Starlink is coming. I think it's going to change everything. Now, how does this pertain to what's happening with all of these elections? Maybe there'll be a red wave. Or maybe all of these blue individuals will move into red areas, and then you will be shocked to discover in the next year as Starlink rolls out, Democrats are going to live in the mountains. One of two things may happen. That could dilute the Republican vote in deep red areas, resulting in Republicans losing and Democrats winning these areas like never before. Or it can dilute the blue areas. If you've got a district of 750,000 and 650,000 are Republican because it's a deep red area, and 100,000 Democrats move in, it's still deep red. It would actually disperse Democrat votes, potentially leading to a red wave of epic proportions. The other thing that could happen is that Democrats get countryfied or countryized by going out and realizing there's a bear. What do I do? But guns are bad. We had a bear attack here. Tried breaking into the chicken coop. Fortunately, we triple reinforced chicken coop and he couldn't get in. But yeah, a bear. We think it was a black bear. And that's on our porch, mind you. On our porch. The city folk don't understand that. I had a friend, I tell this story all the time. There is no reason anyone should ever have a gun, period. And I'm like, what if you get attacked by a bear? There's no bears in Los Angeles. Yeah, but what if you live in West Virginia? What if you're in upstate? What if you're attacked by a wolf? I don't want to hurt the animals, but I'd certainly like to live. So I'll tell you this. One of the reasons why I think guns are important is because I've grown quite fond of living, and I'd like to continue doing it if we end up with another bear attack. That being said, red wave. Honestly, I don't know. The signs are there, the signals. Even 538 says history is on the Republican side, but we will see there are too many factors at play. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 8 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimcastIRL. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all then.